As I was introduced, yes, my name is Meider Montenegro, and I will be presenting today along with Mrs. Garcia, who is also here with me.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay, so this is our presentation, and here we go. Just a second. Let me go ahead and let's start. Okay, so our presentation, as you can see right here, it's a universal design for learning, opening the doors to academic success for all.
But just in case, I will read it to you. We have here a teacher asking his students and saying, for a first selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Correct. So that takes us to the next slide, which says, when it comes to learning, variability is the rule, not the exception. When we have our classrooms, they are filled with variability, not just the classroom, the world. This is our reality. And this does not only speak about inclusivity now is everything from gender, from the gender, your preferences, if you're deaf, if you are blind, if you the way you learn, the way you express yourself, etc., etc. And this takes us to this following video. Please, somebody, I need confirmation that you guys are able to hear this whenever I'm going. Well, I apologize for that. The video, it was a video, but now it's only an image. And so to move on and not make you guys lose more time, let me explain a little bit about the video. Yeah, sorry. Um, this was a TED Talk. In the TED Talk, the speaker is deaf, and he was explaining about a situation in which a friend of his, who is also deaf, bumps into a blind person. So, in that situation, what to do? As a deaf person, they can't hear you, he can't see. So, in that moment, the best solution for him was to take the person's hand and put it to his ear and go like this. No, and the person understood. In a nutshell, that is universal learning, some symbol or a way in which we express each other and that everybody can understand. And that what is more inclusive than that? Something that is thought and designed for everyone to be able to understand, to be able to learn, and to be able to express themselves in their own singular ways. Usability, accessibility, and inclusion. These are, let's say, the what universal design promotes. The definition itself is that universal design for learning is a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice that provides flexibility in the ways information is presented, in the way students respond or demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the way students are engaged. Now, as teachers, we already know that we have many different types of learners and that they all have different backgrounds, cultural, they all have different socioeconomic backgrounds, and they all are simply different. So whenever we plan our class, this is the flexibility they talk about, or that the framework talks about, that for teachers to be able to take all of these factors into consideration. It reduces barriers in instructions, provides appropriate accommodations, supports, and challenges, and maintains high achievement expectations for all students, including students with disabilities and students who are limited English proficient. As I was saying before, whenever we design this way, since it is thought for everyone, and what happens many times with inclusion is that when you are when you include all these variables, you make learning much more approachable, achievable. Now, why universal design? Instructional supports for learning based in the principle of universal design for learning, which fosters students' engagement by presenting information in multiple ways and allowing for diverse avenues of action and expression. So, not only taking to the part in which the teacher plans, but also in which the student engages, in which the student decides to learn and the way that he or she is assessed or evaluated. This, in this case, should be customized or chosen by the student, and this alone engages them and promotes meaningful learning. So, when doing this, we provide multiple and flexible means of engagement, presentation, representation, and expression. All right, I believe Mr. Montenegro is back. Go ahead, Mr. Montenegro. Okay, I believe he's saying that he cannot unmute himself.
Okay, now, yes, finally. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Mrs. Garcia, for helping me out and going and keeping up with the presentation. So yes, exactly. So when it comes to universal design for learning, there are three main principles that have to deal with this framework. Number one, as Ms. Garcia mentioned before, engagement. It's the key one of them. And when it comes to engagement, I think that most of you as instructors, coordinators, or anyone from the field of teaching know that engagement, it got to deal with the introductory part of a lesson, right? It's basically the first part where you start with. Representation, it's also in the field of teaching, we know it as the practice part, like where students start interacting with the content that they are supposed to know, that they are supposed to have some sort of contact with. And of course, the very last one, very last one, which is the last stage, is expression. This is the part where we as instructor we expect our learners to produce, to come up with something. And we will basically say, okay, so now show me that you know, but how do you know it? This is where I want to see it. Okay. So there's no difference regarding other stages in teaching. I mean, there's not much of a difference regarding UDL and other frameworks of teaching. There's always going to be the very last part, which is the production part, called as expression. Uh, I said that there's not much of a difference. However, there's one peculiarity regarding the UDL. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so before I actually say what that peculiarity is about, let me just go little by little regarding these principles. Okay, so the principle one, as I said before, is engagement. This is where we're gonna get all learners interested. Now, when it comes to getting all learners interested, this is not necessarily that, for example, if that every single day of my classes, I'm going to start my classes with a video, then I'm going to start my classes with an image, then I'm going to start my classes with a audio, with a lecture, with anything else. This means that actually when I start introducing, when I start exposing my learners to the class, I have to expose them to different kind of inputs. We have, for example, let's say that we're in a classroom. I can see if I know that some students get more interested when it comes to touching things. Speaking of the tactile learning style, we can give them something so that they manipulate it and they touch it. So in that way, I can catch their attention. When it comes to visual learners, well, I can just show them an image and that will probably catch their attention as well. And when it comes to the auditory learners, I can play something so that they listen to it and catch their attention as well. Now, what I'm trying to say right here is that whenever I start my class based on the UDL, which is a Universal Design for Learning, I'm not going to necessarily start my class with a single input. I'm going to start my class with the three inputs, okay, with the three inputs that I just mentioned. And that is exposing all my students to the three different types of inputs so that that I can get their attention. Just imagine and think about your classes. Uh, how long did it last whenever you used an image? How long do you keep your students engaged when presenting them to an image? Probably no more than 2 minutes. But how about using three inputs at the same time? Can you just imagine? Doesn't it work like in the following way? Like for example, the student sees something, okay, now the other student listens to something else, then he gets his attention there, and then the student just get to touch something that I have right there. So my goodness, I basically catch all the students' attention uh, with three different inputs. Isn't it that more interesting? And isn't it that what basically happens whenever we go shopping and it, whenever we go shopping to a supermarket, for example, how do we get to buy stuff? How do we get interested in getting something? Go to a supermarket, we see something, what calls our attention, it's the style of it, then we touch it, then we see its content, and sometimes we even, if it's something auditory, I'll just listen to it, I just tune it, I just see what it sounds like. But again, what I'm trying to say right here is that actually the more encounters a learner get to have regarding the content that he or she is going to learn, the more interested he or she is going to be in class. So this is the main part right here, motivate them to learn. Something else that can really motivate learners to learn is like letting them know what they are going to achieve by the end of the class, which is really important and quite relevant whenever we teach. Second one, yeah, representation, and the representation part kind of mentioned, I kind of talked about it as the part where they get to um, interact with the material that they are supposed to learn about, in this case, the content. So we have the representation. This is the one that actually allows them to um, acquire, to internalize, practice, acquire, internalize the content throughout activities. What kind of activities? Again, UDL does not only focuses on one single activity. UDL makes use of many activities during the class. Activities, as I said it before, that basically tackle all my students' weaknesses. And I wouldn't say not only tackle, actually address all my students' learning styles and intelligences as well. Now, so far, but what I just said, you can say like, my goodness, this seems like a lot of work. Yeah, it will probably be a lot of work at the beginning, but then as you get used to it, trust me, it's very rewarding. Okay, third one is expression. And as I said it before, expression, it's about how am I gonna um, how am I gonna measure if my students learn or didn't learn, or if they are in the progress of learning. When it comes to demonstrating production, production is not only about like having my students eliciting some sentences out loud. It's not only about that. It can be in a written form. It can be by, for example, coming up with a mini project and showing it to me. It can be, for example, with singing something and showing me that they know something by making a little song and so on. So my main emphasis right here is to make you aware that when it comes to expression can take place in many different ways. And the reason why I want to make a lot of emphasis on expression is because sometimes as instructors, and based on the image that Mrs. Garcia showed you, like the image of the animals, sometimes we only assess our students in one way. And let's say in the written, in a written way, like with a test, with a quiz, sorry. How about actually asking them to draw something? Some students asking them to draw something. If that is their strength, let's go for it. How about asking some others to come out and come up with something that like a song? How about having some others writing a mini reflection or a poem and so on? That's what that's what UDL it's all about. Now again, I have said a lot, and so far I can say that probably you might be thinking about. So what's UDL? It seems like that's about a lot of activities, all of them put in to practice. I mean, all of them being distributed and used at the same time. In one way, not necessarily, and we will see that later on. Okay, so we'll see. Okay, um, why UDL? Why should we go with UDL? Because UDL actually makes emphasis on no more singular views of representation. UDL is against repetition, raw repetition, but instead it's like about, remember when I talked about the inputs? It's about basically having some practice, some drilling, but using different kinds of inputs. Engagements, how to stimulate engagement, how to stimulate motivation, intrinsic to extrinsic motivation. Thank you. Okay, but again, when it comes to UDL, let me tell you that you're not alone. When it comes to UDL, there's a web page that I'm going to share with you, and actually that's one of the main purposes regarding this presentation today, and that is to equip you with certain resources. I mean, equip you with an access to certain resources that are going to be found in this presentation. If I'm allowed to, I will be more than happy, or actually right at the end, I'm going to share my email so that you can contact me. And in case you are interested in, I can share with you this presentation that holds a lot of resources, links that will take you to rubrics, templates, etc. regarding UDL. So this what you see right here in this image, this is actually a web page. There's a web page by the CAST organization that it's the main one. It's a leading organization regarding UDL, Universal Design for Learning. And right there, they provide the guidelines for structuring lessons, putting into practice the UDL framework. Okay, so as you can see, they start with engagement. There we have this access, build, internalize, and then the goal. And there they give you all the guidelines. Okay, can we go to the next one so that I can show you what I'm talking about more specifically? Okay, so for example, as I said it before, in this presentation, you're gonna have access to many links that I'm gonna take you to the following material. As I said it before, speaking of this one that is right at the bottom, by having access here to the one that says UDL guidelines, you will just click in the arrows that you can see right here, and it will take you directly to the definition regarding what engagement is all about. Not only that, but also you can also click on the different guidelines under standard 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, and etc. And by clicking in there, they will give you some examples that you can actually use and implement in your classes. Also, as you can see right here, can you go back a little bit, Ms. Garcia? So, okay, as you can see right here, it says your notes, and right here, this is kind of a template. This is a template that I have used most of the times for whenever I want to assess myself if I'm doing things the way I'm supposed to do it regarding putting into practice the UDL. So if I have my doubts and I don't know how to offer ways of customizing the display of information, if I don't remember how to do that, I will just click here and it will take me to a page where I have some examples on how to do that. So right after clicking on that, I will be able to come up and start coming up with some activities for my lesson planning. Okay, so basically these are the guidelines, and this is the UDL Educator Guidelines Planner. Once again, you're gonna have access to this as you require it. As you're planning, you can see that basically planning it's about like designing. It's like about structuring your symphony. It's like structuring your master class, structuring your plan regarding what you want your students to learn, how you want them to do it. So right here in this presentation, I provided with an instructional planning process that you will eventually see. And this lesson planner. So for example, as you can see right here, uh, it shows basically the kind of intelligences that I want to address. It also shows the kind of tools that I'm uh, uh, tools that I'm going to use in the class. I will just put a check on it. And right after that, it recalls all the guidelines that you can use, that you have to use regarding the UDL. Again, I'm basically just running with a lot of content. I know that as teachers, well, in my case, I learn best by seeing examples, and that's something that we will eventually do. I don't know if Ms. Garcia, you would like to share something else with us so far?
I said a lot at the beginning. Later on. Thank you.
Okay, so next slide. Okay, so right here, maybe you can click on the first lesson plan. Thank you very much. Right now, just for the sake of time, I will just share, I will just cover this first lesson plan. Once again, this is a lesson plan that was used by some of my colleagues. This is Lucas, Rose, and Joey. Uh, as you can see in this lesson plan, they basically talked about, well, the standards. They make a lot of emphasis. This is an ELA class, a language art class, basically. And what they do is like they start, of course, they start talking about the purpose of the lesson. They start with the purpose of it. And normally, a lesson plan for UDL will not necessarily be as so descriptive as this one regarding this one. For example, establish goals. As you go through and as you are used to using UDL, you will not necessarily have to copy all this, but in a way, I use it for the sake of remembering the elements that I have to place when planning. And this was the purpose of this lesson plan template, was basically to guide Lucas, Rose, and Joy regarding what I expected, well, what they were expected to do regarding their lesson. So they stated the purpose. Um, they kind of narrated what the students were going to be able to do, and they also mentioned the standards regarding the class that were supposed to be achieved. When it comes to inclusivity, when it comes to inclusive lessons, and this is something that happens in Latin America, when it comes to inclusivity, sometimes we believe that inclusivity it's about doing the following. Inclusivity it's about having the students in the having all the students in a single classrooms and just lowering the standards for certain students, in this case, students with disability. Well, that's not what UDL actually focuses on. Instead of that, as you may see, the reason why I stated the standards right there, it was because I would expect that all my students actually meet the standards. And that is why I'm using UDL so that all the students, by the way I organize my activities and by the way I present the content, that all my students become capable of reaching those standards. Uh, Here we have some understanding. Students will understand that. Okay, big ideas. As you can see, I'm going from general. Essential questions, well, provocative questions will use to foster inquiry, understanding, and transfer of learning. So when it comes to UDL, it's a constant reflection that happens before and during the class. Again, as I said it before, yes, I will share all that material. Absolutely, Marilyn. I will share the presentation with all these links so that you can have access to all this. As I said it before, when it comes to talking about UDL, this is like this is not only about like a single workshop. This is more like a hands-on uh, developing activity, basically. All right. So can we scroll down a little bit more, Miss Garcia? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And here I go. So I'm developing by name of the lesson. Students will be able to, and here I have it. Once again, UDL also works with Bloom's taxonomy, of course. And once again, maybe you can scroll down a little bit faster, so that's all right. We're not gonna go over in detail. So right here, stage 2, assessment evidence. Okay, what can I use? And as you can see right here, what other evidence, example, quizzes, tests, homework, what evidence as an instructor uh, I can, okay, in this case, what activities can I provide my students with that in a way serve me as an evidence to analyze, to assess their learning for the upcoming other classes? This is the part where I have to basically, this is the part where I basically have to uh, collect data that will allow me to make future choices. And in this case, as you may know, as teachers, we're constant research. We're constantly doing research all the time. regarding what we're best, regarding our students' best interests, and regarding our students' learning. So as you can see, maybe if we keep scrolling down, thank you so much. There we have the learning plan. Okay, what am I supposed to do right here? What learning experiences will enable my student to achieve the desired result? And again, this template actually what it does, it guides instructors to reflect on how to structure their lesson plans, how to choose the content, how to identify where the content it's too easy, it's too complex, or if it's just probably right, if it needs adaptation, and so on. And of course, eventually, how I will keep constantly assessing my students' learning and needs, and so on. So right after I had all that reflection time, getting my lesson prepared, this is where I basically do what you basically know how to do best, which is structuring your lesson plan. This is kind of a narration, and as you can see, it's basically structuring the activities as every single lesson plan, written reflection, discussions, and so on. So the very last part of this, it's what you call the lesson plan that you're very familiar with, where you see all the activities, where you see the description, and so on. All right. So, okay. So there you will find in this presentation, you will find two lesson plans that you can go through them so that you can become more familiar regarding UDL. But of course, before you do that, or as you're doing that, as you're going through the lesson plans, I will strongly suggest you to go through the links that I previously mentioned. Maybe we can go to the next slide, Mrs. Garcia. Okay, so how can you assess your level of UDL implementation in your classroom? Okay, well, very simple. In that link, you will find such rubric, technology again, you know. So as you can see right here, this is basically for self-assessment. This is something that once you structure your lesson and you have everything ready to go, you can just go ahead and assess yourself how your lesson plan was designed. You made the right choices? Well, how can you know that? Well, here you have it. Here's this rubric. And with it, you can actually assess yourself or you can assess others if you're a coordinator, let's say. All right. Now, a good thing that when it comes to assessing oneself or assessing others is to have this moment of exchanging ideas. What evidences tells me that I achieved this? All right. And of course, that you can do it as you're going through your lesson planning. Okay. Am I a UDL idle? Am I a UDL advanced? Did I encourage my students to share how content is relevant? Blah blah blah. Did I do that? Garcia, can we go back to the presentation? Thank you so much. Okay, so we have that implementation. Now, also right here, I decided to, there's a portfolio. Nowadays, well, this is a portfolio of the following instructor. Her name is Emily Bilson. Emily, for her final master portfolio, she came out with the following project, and this is her project. Her project was, I mean, her final project was on UDL. So right here in this portfolio, you will be able to find some examples of UDL lessons. When it comes to UDL, you can find UDL lessons in mathematics, science, and language arts. I will say that those are and of course, social studies as well. But for the sake of time, she was not able to finish to add the social study one. Okay, but anyway, in there in this portfolio, you will find some example of how the lessons were structured by her and how she carefully selected the content and activities regarding um, her classes. Okay, can we go back to the slide, Ms. Garcia? Thank you so much. And I'm sorry. Okay, so again, as I said it before, UDL is a framework. The focus of it is to create and implement lessons with flexible goals, methods, eclectic methods, materials, multiple materials and resources, assessment, multiple types of assessments that benefits all my students. Okay, so that's the main thing regarding universal design of learning. And as I said it before, when it comes to talk about universal design, this is a single workshop is not enough. I'm more of the idea of hands-on projects that will lead you to understand the universal design of learning more in depth. So I don't know. Well, can you click a little bit more, Miss Garcia? Okay, and thank you. There's my email. Um, you can contact us both through that email in case you want to, you would like us to exchange some other materials that we have, or in case you would like to have access to this presentation. So if you have questions, you can go ahead. Ms. Garcia will answer all your questions.
I did want to add something. Nowadays, after COVID and all the situation, we have all of our learning institutions have a platform in which we use, in which we also have parallel to our classrooms if we're not doing it completely online. This gives us an opportunity to be able to do this. I mean, because he and I, we were talking earlier about this in the practicity mode. You know, when you are teaching, how would you do this in the classroom? You know, okay, so first I'm going to give a lecture, then I'm going to show them a video, then I am going to have them work in groups. I mean, it feels like a lot of the same information. And this is where platforms can really give us a hand, where you can give students uh, a variety of resources and they can use the one that works best for them. So, for instance, you could have an infographic for the visual ones, you could have a video for others, you could have text for those for the readers. So, basically, my addition to this is that uh, a virtual platform nowadays is helpful, very helpful and useful for this, for UDL, for the implementation of UDL.